Hello and welcome to another episode of Leaders of Transformation. Today, we're going to talk about a very important topic because we are in uncertain times, and I wanted to bring guests that could speak to what is going on right now and that could give you some practical tips and insights on how to lead through these uncertain times. And also, if you're on a team, how do you navigate from that aspect? And so we've got a wonderful guest here, Sue Salvemini, and she is a author, a speaker, an executive leadership expert, and she helps leaders and teams align with their work with their core values to maximize impact and fulfillment. She is the author of a book called Leadership by Choice, and it's an excellent book, very practical. She also has a workbook, that goes with that. And her book, she talks about the 7 keys to maximize your impact and influence in the workplace, right where you are. And the interesting thing is she wrote that book before all this coronavirus came out, and here we are going to be talking about how to lead right where you are. And that might be your kitchen table right now. So with kids running around in the background. And so I'm really excited to have her here. She's going to talk about some practical tips that will help you to navigate this. So Sue, welcome to Leaders Transformation.
Thank you. It's really good to be here, especially during this time when there's so much uncertainty and so much eagerness towards paving a new way of doing things.
Yes.
Especially for leaders.
Well, there's an eagerness on some part and for some people, and then there's like a complete fear and trepidation as to, oh my gosh, how do I deal with this? And how do I navigate like all of that that's going on behind the scenes, which may be kids running around,
Yes.
and navigating, two people working while this is all happening and not having the daycare and so forth. So there's a lot going on. And just even the adjustment, I think, of staying at home and not being able to go out and just live your day, life the way you're used to. I think that's making a lot of people really stir crazy. I know for myself, it feels like I'm used to working from home. So that part's not new, but I also have the freedom to go out and do what I want. And so if I can't go out and get that freedom, to have that freedom to do that, then I don't like it when people tell me I can't do something. So, and most leaders are like, most leaders don't like that. It's like, your book is called Leadership by Choice. We like to make our own choices. And so when we are limited in that, it can also create that added frustration. So how do we navigate these uncertain times and maximize our impact and our influence during that?
So there's a couple of ways that I'm finding it's a common thread, and I work with a lot of executive clients and I work with private clients. So this is everything from people that run, Fortune 100 companies in the C-suite to solopreneurs that have had their own businesses for years, and some that are just starting. And I can say very definitively that there's some common themes, which is why this opportunity to talk to you and talk to our listeners is so critical right now. And I think that the first thing that I want to just say is the book has not been written on this. We've never, ever had a time where the world has been in a pandemic where we can read a book on this is how you lead. So I think that that's very encouraging in the sense that each one of us has an opportunity to define that. And if there's ever a better time to be your authentic self, now is it. And it's funny, I did write my book 2 years ago. And as this all came to light, I started to, I'm in the book all the time with different work I do. And the book is still relevant. There's a couple of things that I think are more that we'll talk about today to hone it into an emergent situation such as we're in. But the book is about how do you choose to lead at any given point in your life, at any given point in your career, personally, professionally. So I would encourage that because the exercises I think will help you. But the first thing is, again, recognize where you are right now. And as you said when we started, some people are eager. Some people are very fearful. People don't know. There's so many things on their list of what to do and how to be. And I've got, and like you said, people that are working at home for the first time, this is really new. People that have worked at home it's really new having everyone around you. It's like people say, oh, you work from home your whole life. And I'm like, yes, but I don't always have a family, and there's not noise in the background, and I can go to my clients. So like you said, being sort of locked in your home is hard, even for those of us that have done this for a very long time. So I think it's important that you first get really honest with yourself and, one, recognize where you are emotionally with what's going on, and be careful in that not to project what's going on for you on all of those around you. So I might be eager because I see such an opportunity to serve people right now, but others might be very fearful and afraid to put themselves out there. And neither one is right or wrong. It's about knowing where you are and giving space for the people around you to be where they are.
That's a really great point, because I noticed myself, because I'm the eager one, and I had to be careful of not being impatient. This is one of my go-to emotions, if you will, is the impatience of like, why are people just sitting there and, keeping busy,
Right.
and why aren't they out doing more? And they have so many things that they could do, and, and they're not there yet. So they're not there on that curve where they're like ready to even process that, because they're still calibrating where they are, and it's not good or bad, right or wrong. It just is.
Right.
So, great point.
And it can be challenging. And if you're leading a team, this is the next point. The second point is you do need to appreciate that everyone is responding to this very differently.
Yes.
This pandemic has brought out sort of some blind sides that people don't even know they had, fears about uncertainty. I think and I say faith, both in a true spiritual sense, but also in a people, what they align with and what gives them strength and confidence is right between the eyes for people right now. And that's been rocked. So people that maybe have never even thought about that, with an uncertain future, even 6 months, let alone a lifetime, right? That's causing people to reflect, and the response to that is different for everyone. So first, understand where you are. Second, really be aware and appreciate that everyone's at a different place and they're responding to this differently. And it's not necessarily a linear path. Today, I might feel really invigorated about my work and confident that the work I'm putting out is going to be useful and the business will continue to serve people. Tomorrow, I could wake up, I could hear something on the news or just be more tired and be like, none of this is worth anything. And people are like that. So it's important that you understand that. And then the third point is, given those two, 1 and 2, you need to meet people and where they are and focus on it. And that means by having open conversations and really listening. And when I say listening, you're listening to what they're saying and what they're not saying. And I will say, so I've always been a very upfront and in-person worker my whole life in corporate and in medical devices. If I could get in front of a person face-to-face live, I would do anything to do that. The thought of having conversations on the phone or via Zoom was very unappealing to me. But what I've learned in the past 4 years, and I feel that it's serving me now today for this very message, is the power of a phone call is far greater than I ever realized. And I'm saying even without video. And the reason I'm sharing this is because I think people feel that because they're not in an office space or they're not with their clients, that they're missing something. This actually is giving you the greatest opportunity to learn how to truly listen and hear what someone's saying in their words, but what they're communicating just in tone, which we take for granted when we're right up and close in someone's face. So use this time to listen. And the best way to find out where someone is to ask them. And you can, and I know that sounds silly, but I have a big note on my desk as I was working with a client that was going back and forth with their manager in an email exchange that was spiraling south quickly. And I finally said to my client, I said, why haven't you picked up the phone? Like, we've lost our voice. We've gotten so fast in what we do, we've lost our voice. And I feel that this time has given us the opportunity to take that back. Because the only way we can communicate is by picking up the phone, or we should. Get away from email. If you find that dialogue is moving too quickly, pick up the phone, hop on a Zoom call, nip it in the bud before thoughts and perceptions spiral. We don't know what everyone is channeling and funneling right now. So the best way to meet them where they are is to ask and find out where they are. And in the same light, don't be afraid to share where you are. You know, you hear about vulnerable leadership and making yourself vulnerable. Be honest. None of us have all of the answers. None of us know what tomorrow will bring. And specifically, as it relates to leading and guiding a team, we're sort of figuring it out as we go. So there's something when you say that as a leader, your team sort of, they get it. But we as leaders often don't want to admit that we don't know. This is a time that we can admit that, and that we need collective effort to come together for this. And it's amazing. I'm already seeing amazing trust relationships be formed in teams that have worked together for years. They're coming together on a whole different level because the leader or the individuals are being vulnerable with their fears, their challenges, and also trying to lean in at the moment and show up.
Well, there's a humanity to this. It's so funny because like I can see your background on the video and you can see mine. And I was talking to somebody recently about this, now working virtually with their team, and they got to see each other's animals, or their pets are climbing all over the place. And they're like, oh, what's going on in your background? You know? And so you get to see each other. Normally, you know, coworkers will see each other strictly in the workplace environment. Here, we're actually getting to see each other in our home environment. Sure, some may have green screens and so forth and whatever, but a lot of people are just being like, this is what it is.
Right.
And so we get to see a lot more, and you get to see more of the personality of the person or what's going on in their family and the dynamics that are going on. So it can be very intimating in that.
Absolutely. It's funny as you're saying this, I have a client, a senior executive, and we always have our calls, and we do video calls intermittently. Well, of late, of course, he's working from home. Well, he has an 18-month-old son that, you know, because everyone's home, he's doing double duty. And so the funnest part of our last two calls have been the son getting on the screen, and it's changed the whole dynamic. You know, it's just, that never would happen. So I see that as a great blessing. You know, you do get a different dimension of the people that you're working with. Yeah. And people are much more willing to show it because truthfully, they don't really have options or choices. So yeah. It is what it is. And I think that can be very positive if you appreciate it for what it is.
Yeah. So what are some tips for organizing yourself at home for those that are not used to it, or those, like you said, that are not used to having others at home with you? What are some systems that you have found that have been working for you or for your clients in terms of moving that workstation home?
Well, the first thing is recognize that everyone's going to have a different situation. Not everyone has a special office or room, and you might be one of those people. So I will say there's a very, very practical logistics element of this. And by now, people have figured out that they either love their homes or not. I hear a lot of, but the truth is you're already starting to take an evaluation of what's working or not working. So I'm going to encourage everyone to take a pause and think back to the past couple of weeks. What do you think has been going well? I work out of my home, but now that I'm doing a lot more video, I completely rearranged my office because I had a window in my background that was really messing up video. So I would encourage everyone, first of all, see if you can stake some real estate in your home, whether it's a corner or a separate room. If it's not, it might be shared space where everyone needs the same thing. If you have multiple people from home working that need video conference, you might need to share a space. So see if you can find an area that is good for video if that's what your work is calling for. And with that, you've got to create some rules for the home. And it could be a schedule. It could be understanding who needs the space if it's a video call, and the timing. Some things to think about with video calls, and this is it's sort of funny, and you really need to understand your background, you know, because there have been several instances where other family members might just be getting up out of bed, i.e. teenagers, and walking behind you with half of their clothes on. And you're in this video call with 12 people, and all of a sudden you're very aware of the fact that your son, not that this happened to me, walks by with no shirt on. So you want to be sensitive. What are people seeing? From the perspective of, if you've got open space, you want to protect your family from that. And you want to, obviously just be able to focus on the call. The other thing is, this brought me back to when my kids were little, and I would put a signal. So depending on how old your kids are, C meant mommy was on a call. And so we lived in a smaller home, and I had 3 kids under 5 running around, and I tried to create some system so they understood I was on a call. Now I shut the door and I have a sign on my door that says call in progress. It sounds silly, but it works. And the same thing with my teenagers. When they're in a class, because they're doing virtual, they shut their door. But we're fortunate enough to have different spaces for that. I would suggest, if you don't, see if there is a room to do this work. If not, I do have clients that go into their car. And it sounds a little crazy, but they sit in their car for privacy. And what you want to do is create a space that you can be as most present for your team, your colleagues, whoever you're engaging with, that works for you. And if you have distractions in the background and you can't be present, then that space is probably not working for you. So I would suggest it's worth it to sort of really stop and pause and make this happen. I did. I tore my office apart a week ago, literally had everything out of my office to rearrange it, because the way I had it that had worked for me previously was not working. And that was worthwhile time, because now I come in and things are moving forward. If you don't have a good headset, I would get a good headset. And you can order that on Amazon and have one in a heartbeat, just so that people can hear you. The other thing to take into consideration is your Wi-Fi. And if you can hardwire in, depending on what you're doing. But the main element is get your space workable. And if you have other people in the family that you're sharing it with, sit down, have a real heart-to-heart conversation with what everyone needs and how you can make this work. Everyone is figuring this out. And understand too that people accept that it's not going to be perfect. This is the time of it's okay. It is what it is. Another thing I would say, just in preparation for calls, and this goes into sort of when I first started working in my home office years ago, and I mean years ago, 20 plus, we'll leave it at that. It's really important in my mind that you get dressed for work. You're still in your role, and there's a couple of reasons to do this. One is it sets a tone and an impression for yourself and your family. Now, on the weekends or whatnot, when we're not working, we might throw sweatpants on and get into our office or do something or work. But when we are on the hours, on the clock, so to speak, and we're working, get dressed. Fix your hair, do your makeup, whatever. Don't because it tells the family too that you're at work. So it just creates limits, and it also does elevate your commitment to working. So the first thing is your physical space. Just find what works for you, even if it's the corner of a bedroom. The second thing I would say is really getting honest with how you are with scheduling. This is a time like none other that you truly are your own boss. Only you can see what you're doing with your time, how you're using it, and how productive or unproductive you're being. And what I found when I first started working from home, and I had been in the military on a very diligent schedule beforehand, and now I moved into a corporate role of sales. So I worked from my home as a sales professional. The first, I'd say couple of years even, but the first 8 months were like, whoa, this is all me. So you need to understand that one of two things potentially happens. One, you either have such challenges finding order that you aren't getting much work done at all. You're caught up with, understandably, homeschooling, guiding your teenagers, coordinating with your spouse, food shopping on the isolated times you might be going out, meal planning, laundry, all of the basic household chores. And if you had people coming in to help you with that, these responsibilities are now added. So just managing the household and a job that's different. So what can happen very easily is when you're your own boss and you don't need to be anywhere, you can find that your days are very quickly consumed with other very necessary tasks. So sometimes one extreme is you get almost nothing done. The opposite of that is you go into your workspace and you put your head down and you actually could work around the clock because there's no stopping you, and it actually makes you feel good, like you're doing something. So the biggest value that I found was creating a schedule, a very specific schedule. And after this, I'll talk about things to include in the schedule. But for right now, for practicality, I would say create almost a non-negotiable schedule that you can work with that outlines a start time and a stop time, and then honor it. You go to work, and then when you leave work, you might break for lunch or whatnot, but create a schedule and a time schedule. And if it helps, post it so your family can see it, and have everyone do the same thing. And what it does is by creating routine, we start to feel some sense of normalcy. It's really an opportunity to take back a little bit of control where so much around us feels out of control. And what I find is just energetically, attitudinally, you start to feel better. Your brain opens up. You don't feel so restricted. Rather than focusing on everything that's taken away from you right now or what you can't do, you start to really create intentionally what you can do. So create that schedule that works for you. Now, the schedule might not be 9 to 5. Not that many of us work 9 to 5 anymore. The schedule might be that I'm going to be up and in my office from 6 to 9. Then from 9 to 11, I'm working to homeschool my kids or support other things in the house. Then 11 to 3, I'm going to be back in the office. 3 to 6, I might be working with the family or preparing meals or doing quality time with my family. 6 to 8, it might be bedtime, depending on how old your children are, or just relaxing. And maybe then you catch email for 2 hours. I'm not suggesting that you work that way, but what I'm suggesting is understand that this is what flexible working is. There's lots of benefit to it. There can be some challenges, but if you need to create that time for you, and you will be amazed at how liberating having that schedule in place is, because you know that you've scheduled time to accomplish what you need to accomplish, and you've also scheduled time outside of work to be with your family, to take care of your exercise, your meditate, whatever you need to fuel yourself to complete the day.
That is so good. And speaking of interruptions, my cat just woke up.
I was going to say, my cat, I was on a call, this is so real, and my cat just walked right across, and I'm having this grit because I'm thinking, how did the door open? And then I realized it had opened somewhere in the call, but I have this big cat, and it was quite fun. So I'm happy your cat's there.
Yeah, he's just arrived. And so it's funny because I thought about putting him outside. So we're talking about logistics right at home. So I thought about, well, I'll just keep him outside the room, right? When I started doing these podcasts. And I realized quickly that wasn't going to work, because he just scratches at the door, because he's kind of like a dog in a cat's body. And he's like, why won't you let me in? And so it was worse. So I was like, you know what, we're just going to go with it. And it's funny because some people would say, it's kind of unprofessional, and you have your pet, walking across your desk, or, the webcam, I see the little tail that goes like this, right, or something like that. But you know what? It's at the same time, it's also real. And it's funny because I've had people say to me, I should do a podcast and just have like less leadership lessons from my cat. Like right now he is sticking his head through the ring light and saying, oh, like what do I do here? And it's just like, you know what? This is life.
Anything goes.
And it's so, I love what you said there, because it's about choosing. Again, you talk about, like, your book is Leadership by Choice, and this ability to choose, even though there's certain things that we cannot control, or people or circumstance that we cannot control. There is so much that we can control, yes, and or manage through it's like, if we just get that we're not in control, that in itself is very freeing, just to get that, yeah, because like trying to control everything can frustrate us and create a lot of stress. It's unnecessary stress because we think we can control it. And so but then to choose and say, okay, what can I do with what I've got? I think that was very powerful. And managing your time. This is something that I've even shared with clients, this idea for years. It's like, if they're in business for themselves, entrepreneurs, and they work from home, what are your hours of operation?
Right.
A real business, a traditional business, when you go to the grocery store, they list their hours of operation. And so you have a real business. It might be from home, but it's a real business. And even if you're working for someone else, you have a real job. You have a job, you have a function, and you're in the business of you Inc., if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what are your hours of operation? And they don't have to be traditional hours and 9 to 5. It's interesting because I was thinking about this also, that if you think 200, 500 years back, that's how families operate, right? They may not have had the speed of change and technology, of course, and all of that. When you think about, they navigated with kids all the time being around. To them, they must, if they were to look at us now, they'd be laughing and going, "What are you talking about? I had my kids everywhere." This is how we did it. And so, but for us, we're not used to that.
No, and I think what I'm mostly, I just feel blessed to be in the role I am, because I'm hearing of more blessings around families. There's definitely a lot of stress, and I do have a fair amount of clients that continue to remain in a little bit of a paralyzed state of not knowing how to move forward. But I'm hearing more stories of connections that are being made in families that are really positive. And it's so which takes me really to, so how do we take all of this? We've got some practical, we started with sort of just realize that we're all at a different part in this journey, and that's okay. Like, if you ever could be more authentic than now, I just don't know, because people accept that everything's imperfect. So, and then we move into some practical steps, like let's like roll up our sleeves and get our office set and understand how to do business so that it works for us given this environment. And then we talked about schedule. And the thing about schedule that's really key, and this is probably at the heart of both my book, but now, and this is the finesse of what's different, that's not really in my book as much, but now, and this will all be on my website at focalpointeinc.com/resources. So everything we've talked about, there's actually tools and resources for people to download a couple of pages and just help them get their brain around it. And these resources can be used with families. They can be used with their teams and colleagues. They can be used to trigger conversations to really uncover this, which I've been using with my clients, and it's really helped bring people closer. But when we talk about our schedule, I want you to think about, we don't know how long this will last. So I'm encouraging everyone to think about, okay, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 1 year from now, we're looking back on this time. How do you want to reflect on how you showed up as a leader in your business, as a leader of your team, as a colleague, as a parent, as a partner, as a sibling, as a child? How do you want to look back at this time and remember what you were able to do during this time of uncertainty? And what I do, and it's too much for this call, but I encourage everyone to take a piece of paper and literally write down the many hats and roles that they occupy. And there might be 3 or 4 that are really have become super present. And the opportunity in this time that we're in is like none other. And I take people through these exercises in my workshops, but life has created this exercise in and of itself. Very quickly, people have identified what's most important to them, what they need to focus on. And in many cases, it's, family, health, food, resources, okay? And there's extensions of that. So take the hats that you wear. And then in the next column, you're going to write, what do you value most about each of those roles? What are your core values in that? And then the next column is, what actions am I doing that honor these values in these roles? And I'll just give one example, and then I'll explain how this goes along. So I think of me as a parent right now. And I say that because I've got 3 teenagers, one of which is really not excited about not being able to go see his girlfriend. And I get it, he's 17, and he can't really embrace that social distancing is serious. So, one of my values is with my kids is communication and quality time with them. And I'm just going to say this, guilty as charged. So as I was thinking this through, even for the call, because I've been refining this for my clients, because when I do core values, it's a lot more further out versus right in the here and now. So as I'm filling in the activities of what am I doing to honor that core value, I have written down, well, we play cards together, we try to talk, we eat dinner together. But let me just be honest with where the big fat gap was for me. It wasn't enough. And just doing this exercise, and I eat, sleep, and breathe this stuff. So I'm laughing. I'm just fully being raw right now. I realize that we've all gotten into our work modes and functioning. So everybody's on their computers in our spaces. And I'm doing a lot of production right now because my client is to serve in the immediate. And I realized that I haven't honored that. So this exercise in that one hat just brought me right to front and center that what I create today is lifelong. And how that relates to the schedule that we talked about earlier very practically is sometimes we need to schedule these things in, because if we're not practicing them organically or naturally, it's because we have some default tendencies, not because it's not really important to us. So this exercise will encourage you, and I encourage everyone to pull this down. And if you don't want to download it, just do as I described. And how you want to be remembered, how you want to look back on this time, and then do it from these different lenses in the hats that you wear. And what activities would demonstrate that type of value? And then the next thing is, what do I need to change or make sure I'm scheduling time for? Here's the best part of this. Regardless of whether this pandemic lasts 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, a year, or this way of living, let's even call it a way of living. If you can nail these top critical roles you play and how you want to show up and how you really want to be, and you start to put into practice planning and exercises and activities and events and thoughtfulness that resonates with it, you won't lose this, or you have less of a chance of losing this when life evolves into a new way of functioning. And so if you do nothing else, I would encourage every single person to do this. This is the first chapter in my book. It's the first chapter because it unequivocally is probably the most important chapter as it relates to you being an effective leader for yourself. And then you take this and you can help other people do the same. So it just has so much impact. And then the last chapter of the book is about listening. And it's equally important. And I start it with saying, listening to you. And this exercise is actually teaching you how to listen to yourself and what you know about yourself. And then in turn, as we started this call, about really getting good at listening to others, not just your colleagues, your family, your children, your partner, your spouse. So I believe in my heart that if you can really tap into, in a raw form, what's most important to you right now and capture it, you have the greatest opportunity to take this really challenging time and create something lifelong, life-changing for you that will carry over regardless of what work you're doing or what life looks like in the future. I feel very confident in saying you won't lose what you gain from this exercise.
So good. Yeah, thank you for that, because we can think so practically, like as in, how do we survive this?
Mm-hmm.
But there's an opportunity here to thrive, and not just in accomplishing a lot of things, but actually thriving in choosing the life. And I know that you're really big on that. It's like creating a life that you actually love. And I notice even for myself, even though I choose the things that and I'm very intentional about what I say yes to and what I say no to, even so in this season, I've noticed myself reevaluating that and reevaluating, where am I spending my time? What is most important to me? There's so many things that I could be doing. What is most important to me based on my values? And if there's that, and I hear also in this, is that if there's a dissatisfaction, this is also where you get to look, is because maybe there's a dissatisfaction where you have a list of core values, but you're not actually operating from them, or you're out of integrity in certain areas, and you're not even realizing it. And when you realize it, you realize, oh, that's where that dissatisfaction, that friction is, in terms of what I say is important to me and how I'm actually living right now. So this is really, really good. Thank you.
Oh,
yeah.
You're welcome. And I do mean you're welcome, but I say it in the sense that every time I have this conversation, which is almost daily, because it's such a key element in all of my coaching calls and work with my clients, it can't be underestimated. And I say it just in the simple thing as even my own acknowledgement this morning on my run, which I finally incorporated again, because, being a business owner, I love my work. I could sit and work all the time because it's so invigorating for me. And I will pass up like exercising, but I realized, the same thing. I'm starting to evaluate going, I need my exercise. It fuels me. It keeps me strong. But it was on that exercise that my mind was going. And I started going through the exercises that we're talking about now. And I said, and just was calling to me was this whole thing about, wait a minute, we're all in our separate rooms right now. I don't like that. I don't want to continue that. So, I'll be corralling teenagers to, and sometimes it's just hanging out in their rooms. But that was just one example of it, that even when you're in it, it really requires constantly revisiting it and checking in. And it's like you said, it's when you feel that conflict, that's usually when you realize it's the conflict, I believe wholeheartedly, and because you've read the book, comes from a friction between two values that are important to you. And sometimes people I have to bring that out in people through an experience or a training or a reflection, but life has really brought that out in people. They might not have grabbed it yet, and I encourage people to do so, because I just think you'll just be in such a great place down the road to just really embrace where you are and the roles that you serve. And I get excited about that. That just makes me almost speechless when I think of helping people get to that point, because it's pretty awesome. So
yeah, one of my most favorite topics to talk about is this idea of being under pressure and the opportunity that you have to grow and to thrive through it. Not because I chose it, that's just kind of been my life, right? So It's funny how, you have challenges in your life that teach you things. Certainly I have, that have taught me things that then that becomes my greatest passion. So my purpose and my passion comes out of my pain, if you will.
Yes,
and
I know.
and so in this time where we're all getting triggered, those are opportunities. It's like under pressure when I was sharing with a client recently, I said, when you squeeze an orange juice comes out.
Right.
And so if you're being squeezed and something's coming out, that gives you an indication of where there might be something inside that you haven't dealt with, or that, like you said, there's a conflict between values. There's an opportunity there to say, oh, wow, that's what's showing up for me. What can I do? Am I okay with that? Or do I want to improve that, change that, transform that into something that will serve me, going forward? And so it's just such a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. And the first thing is you got to recognize where you're at and acknowledge where you're at and be okay and accept where you're at and not judge it, just be with it and recognize it. So you've given us some great tools, not only on the high level, practical, logistical element of it, but also on a very emotional and even spiritual level of like, how can you realize where you're at and where you want to go from here, from there. So excellent. I'd encourage our listeners to go to Focal Pointe. That's point with an E at the end, Inc.com. We'll make sure this is in the show notes as well. So you can go to leadersoftransformation.com and you can get access to Sue's information. We'll make sure, of course, that her book, and she's also, as I said, she's got an excellent workbook, which is like a very practical resource that goes with this, which she has sent me generously. And I've gone through that. It's just excellent materials. And she's creating more new materials that are relevant right now. And I know you were kind of reviewing some notes there and just really trying to support your clients and people that are going through this experience with the knowledge that you have. And so I'd encourage our listeners to make sure you go get that information so that you can navigate these uncertain times, this chaos, and also this, it's interesting, crisis and opportunity is very closely related. And actually, I understand that the Chinese character for crisis and opportunity is actually the same. And so it's very, very interesting. In the midst of crisis, there is always opportunity. And so to be able to recognize that and to be able to look 3 months, 6 months, a year down the road and look back and say, wow, how did I show up in that?
Yeah.
Wow, I showed up this way, and I'm really happy that that's how I chose to show up. So encourage you that. Again, Sue, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thanks so much. I really appreciate talking to you.
Yeah, and I'm bummed your teens didn't all walk behind you. Come on.
Do we tell them?
Where's the fam? No, I'm just kidding.
So yeah, no, I know. No, we shut the door and made sure that everybody was clothed, and I have a big sign. That's way too much information.
That's a tip. Yes, we were talking about that prior.
The Salveminis go by scantily clad. Not today.
Not today. Oh my goodness. All right. Well, you have a wonderful day. Stay healthy and well.
Thanks. Yes. Yes. You as well.
Thank you. Thank you. We will. And for our listeners, I always say that leaders of transformation take action. Take action on this information. It's valuable. It's pertinent. It's relevant right now. So take action on it. We'd love to hear your stories. You can go on leadersoftransformation.com. You can reach out to me through our contact page. You can also, of course, find us on social media. Facebook, we have our Facebook Leaders of Transformation page where we actually share not only these episodes, but we share really cool things that people are doing in the world to create transformation. So follow us there. And you can hear some of the cool things. It'll be a little bit of a change from the negative media, give you some positive media as to some really amazing things that people are doing out there. And we'd also like to hear your stories, and we invite you to share with us what you're up to and how you're making a positive impact in the world. So we'd love to hear from you. We appreciate you being here. Stay well, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Leaders of Transformation real soon.